Star Wars, Cowboy Bebop, Guardians of the Galaxy, Flash Gordon. Alright, that might be a stretch. Let me bring it back. How about Firefly? What do all of these have in common? That's right, they're all space westerns. What's a space western, you might ask? Well, it's a western, but like, in space. There's just something about cowboys in space that get me tingly. No self-respecting man watches Star Wars and wants to be Luke. No, I'm after the Han job. Wait, you know what? Scratch that. But what about games? Where can I live out the space cowboy fantasy myself? Some of you might be thinking Fallout right now. And that's close, but that's just a sci-fi western. I'm looking for a down and dirty space cowboy. But there is one, a true space western. One where you collect a ragtag crew of misfits to take on whatever jobs you can. One where your actions matter and have consequences. One that truly made me feel like I was Nathan Fillion from Firefly. I'm of course talking about the one and only Outer Worlds. There's a good chance you've heard of or even seen the Outer Worlds before. At the time of its release, it was relentlessly compared to the Fallout series, which is something that happens a lot with Obsidian games. Even their most recent release, Avowed, was compared to Skyrim, which is a surefire way to disappoint. But I'm no stranger to comparison myself. I picked up the Outer Worlds a few years ago, expecting the same thing everyone else was, Fallout in space. Because of that, I found myself dropping the game pretty quickly, as it didn't really meet that standard. In the recent weeks, though, Obsidian has been showcasing some of the Outer Worlds 2, which is set to release sometime later this year, and it kinda looks good? Like, really good? To the point where I found myself downloading the original to give it another shot, and this time, it stuck. So, Fallout in space, huh? That's actually pretty accurate. The Outer Worlds has a lukewarm reception, but I'm not sure that's entirely fair. It's no secret who the Outer Worlds is trying to cater to, but it shouldn't discount what it has to offer on its own. There are some interesting twists here that push it beyond being just another clone. So let's walk through some of the highlights of the Outer Worlds, because this was a game I wasn't expecting to like quite as much as I did. You're woken up from cryosleep and Rick here, Phineas, says, "Hey, it's time to save the world, see ya," and shoots you down to the planet's surface. After stumbling around for a few minutes and realizing you can't center the crosshair in the settings, you can center it if you edit a config file, but then you can't use the iron sights and things look a little weird. Why do I even have to do this? Anyway, you meet up with this dude who's been shot and he acts like he's a walking advertisement. Well, I guess he's not really walking because he's been shot, but you know what I mean. But then you meet the next person and they act like a walking advertisement, but this time they're actually walking, so that's good. And then you walk into town and there's actual advertisements. And you might be thinking at this point, is this a game or a streaming service? Because of the ads? Like the streaming services, they have a lot of... Anyway, the Outer Worlds is filled to the brim with and run by corporations. You'd be forgiven to think in this RPG where choices matter that this would lead to a very black and white moral canvas, but if you play for just a bit, you'll realize things aren't that simple. These corporations don't care about the people underneath them, true, but these corporations also give a steady income, and there's plenty of people in the corporate ladder that genuinely want the best for their people. There's a real case to be made for trying to please these companies, as they're often a reliable way to keep your needs met.
Only after your smoking corpse is thrown from an airlock will we lift the lockdown.
Captain, I would not recommend this course of action.
If I were to draw a comparison, I'd actually say Cyberpunk is closest with its megacorps. The difference here, though, is that the Outer Worlds shows both sides of the issue. It's easy to oppose these companies when it's just words, but as soon as your food supply runs short or need medicine, it becomes a lot harder. Cyberpunk doesn't really do that, instead opting for the corpos bad because corpos option. I mean, no hate towards Cyberpunk. Alright, maybe a little. I just found this to be interesting. I went in thinking screw the elite, but then you realize things aren't that simple. Some folks want to abolish the companies, but others want to reform it, and a lot more simply want to mind their own business and keep their heads down. There's valid reasoning in each philosophy, and it actually got me to think about what choice I thought was best instead of it being blatantly obvious what the good and bad options were. But enough about that, let's get back to the space cowboy fantasy.
Will that be all then?
It's an RPG, so you choose what weapon type you want to specialize in. I chose the only correct option, pistols, because I'm a cowboy, duh. You've got perks and skills. Skills are numbers, perks are words, I guess. It's a pretty standard system, so I don't really feel the need to explain any of this. But what's cool are the flaws. Flaws are these things you pick up when something happens to you. The ones I got were from taking certain damage types or fighting certain monsters. The flaw then gives you a weakness. Again, for me, it was taking more damage from plasma or reduced accuracy when fighting bugs. However, taking the flaw gives you a perk point. Now that's not insane, right? It's just a perk point, but it is kind of cool when you think about it. It means that your character can change based on your actions, which is a nice way to gamble some of your character power and makes your playthrough a little more unique. It would be cool to see this implemented on further, and look, they are in the Outer Worlds too. Which brings me to the point of this video. Obsidian is really good at making B-tier games that get B-tier reception. They make really good games, but ones that often get compared to bigger names, which drags them down. But what if I told you Obsidian was on the potential brink of greatness? The Outer Worlds has a really great theme and writing. The story is fine, but what's really captivating are the themes and ideas it offers, the world itself. What the Outer Worlds really lacks is that solid gameplay. It's serviceable, it's fine, it works, it's fun enough, but it lacks that punch. It's like Fallout 4. Fallout 4 is fine, it's serviceable, and it's certainly a lot better than 3 or New Vegas, but it still lacks that really solid shooter foundation. That's where the Outer Worlds sits, although it's probably a bit better than Fallout 4. On the flip side, Avowed, so far from what I've played, doesn't really have the best story, especially when compared to Pillars of Eternity, which Avowed shares a universe with. But what it does have is really solid action RPG gameplay. It feels really good to cast spells or to hit or shoot enemies. Obsidian has really started to nail the first-person action gameplay, and it shows in Avowed and even some of the previews of the Outer Worlds 2. My point being that we may be right around the corner from potentially one of the better first-person shooter RPGs. We don't really have a ton of them. I mean, there's Cyberpunk, Fallout, maybe even the Elder Scrolls series if you want to stretch the first-person shooter definition a little further. But Obsidian has consistently shown improvements over the years. The Outer Worlds is good, and it's 100% worth playing if you enjoy these first-person RPGs. But if Obsidian takes what they've learned from the first title, please just let me center the crosshair, and applies it to a game that feels as fun to play as Avowed, we may just see some magic happen. We may very well not only get a great first-person shooter RPG, but a great space western RPG. 2025 has already become a legendary year for gaming. From Oblivion and Clair Obscur to Doom, we've already seen so many great games this year. But I've got a keen eye on the Outer Worlds too, and playing the first game only solidified my curiosity. I highly recommend playing the Outer Worlds. It's a relatively short game with a really interesting take on a corporate-run galaxy. Also, the shrink ray is absolutely amazing. That's it. Just use the shrink ray. It's hilarious. So give it a go if you haven't already, and keep the sequel on your radar. It may very well be the next best space RPG.
No visitors allowed, citizen. I'm going to need to see some identification.
You don't need to see his identification.
What? I don't need to see your identification.
Move along.
Move along.